Hi, I'm Don. Today we're painting another miniature from a Patreon partner. So you all know that I love vibrant finishes, very colorful miniatures because they look great on the display cabinet and of course on the table. Thus, I love my Cuttlefish Colors. These paints are available at creaturecaster.com. Today we're painting a Grimskald orc miniature. They have a Kickstarter. I'll put the link below. So watch as we turn and paint this Grimskald miniature, at least the skin, and turn this miniature into this. Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my studio. Other than the support of my awesome patrons, this channel is supported by all these awesome brands. First off, we talk about the thinning of these cuttlefish paints for airbrushing. Paint thinning cuttlefish is super easy because the paints are consistent. The viscosity of the paints are consistent. The only difference among the paints is the opacity, because the glaze paints are glazy, so they're extra transparent. The paints dissolves really well with the Merlin's medium. You need around 3 or even 4 parts paint depending on your air pressure, and then just 1 part Merlin's medium. You know your thin paints are ready for airbrushing when they stick to the glass but they roll down at the same time. I'm painting with a 0.4 needle at 30 psi. Now let's paint. I've been using Cuttlefish color paints for more than a couple of months now, and I think this is the perfect time to actually give you a good review of the paints. I am actually very surprised that the paints are so easy to thin for the airbrush and they airbrush so well. Simply because the coverage is like stronger. Is that the right word? Basically, the coverage is better when you airbrush these paints. A perfect experiment for you if you don't have a cuttlefish, so that you understand the difference of the coverage of paints when you airbrush them or you brush paint them. Inks, for example, regardless of the brand, you thin them down with or mix them with medium. Mix them around 1:1 and brush paint them on a miniature. And then use the same mixture and airbrush it on a miniature. The coverage is different. When you airbrush the same mixture, thinned 1:1 with medium, it will have better coverage. Thus, if you plan to use inks for post shading, I highly recommend you add more mediums than you would if you brush paint the paint or the inks. Simply put, paints have better coverage even if you add mediums if you airbrush them. So the Cuttlefish colors, you have the sketch paints and the glaze paints. The glaze paints are extra transparent and thus they're perfect for shading. Similar if you use them for brush painting. However, both paints, the sketch and the glaze paints, have the same consistency. They have the same viscosity, meaning if you thin them all for the airbrush, roughly around 3 or 4 parts paint and 1 part medium, Merlin's medium, you'll have the same feel of airbrushing them. It's just that the glaze paints are more transparent and are perfect for shading. So Ryan, I did not ask him. Ryan is the chemist of Cuttlefish Colors. He did a great job of making sure that all of the paints are consistent in terms of the viscosity. Now we brush paint. Brush painting cuttlefish is the same with airbrushing them. Again, you have the sketch paints which are more opaque and the glaze paints. It is important to note though that the sketch paints are just more opaque than the glaze paints, but they are still glaze paints. They are still glazy in comparison to normal paints. So if you like to use the sketch paints for glazing, you just need to add more mediums. But again, the viscosity of the sketch and glaze paints are the same. So if you add more Merlin's medium, it will be a bit more runny. And thus, I highly recommend if you're just starting out using Cuttlefish Colors, you just stick to the glaze paints if you're glazing. So basically, do you need to add these paints in your collection of acrylic paints or paints for miniature painting? Well, I think you do, especially if you like to paint with fat glazes and glazing and like building up layers and layers of paints to create more volume and to have good transition. Even if you like airbrushing, you will be amazed once you try airbrushing these paints because they're glazy. Some of the colors are semi-transparent already, so if you use them for like shading, it blends and transitions towards the previous color very nicely. Ultimately, you'll enjoy using these paints if you stick to just using them for glazing and glaze layering and fat glazes. You stick to your opaque paints for detail painting and your contrast paints or inks for quick contrast work of your miniatures. Now it's time to thank all my awesome patrons. I have silver and bronze patrons, which gets like exclusive whips at Patreon, and of course my gold tier level patrons, which has access to my longer tutorial videos, and the higher tier patrons, my platinum tier patrons, has access to like masterclass videos, and of course my palladium tier patrons, which has access to workshops. Now back to the Grimskald miniature. The skin is finished as of now. You may notice that I painted it extra vibrant, extra saturated, because I plan to like use my oils. I told Marco Colucci, one of my Palladium patrons, in our workshop yesterday that I miss using oil paints, and I will use oil paints for this one once I painted the armor parts. So basically, I made sure that the finish is extra bright, extra vibrant, because the oil washes will tone down all this painting at the latter part of the painting process. That's it, Pansit. Thanks for watching, guys.